what a week of news. And what a great place to have John Ellis, founder and editor-in-chief of News Items, to be at the top of the Week in Review. Because John covers everything that I haven't paid attention to. I've been focused on Iran with like a squirrel over there of Minnesota and a squirrel over there of Greenland and back to Iran. John, when I got your show notes for today from News Items, I felt like I had to read the opening one in my NFL feature films from the 60s voice. On a blustery November day, a Cessna turboprop flew over Pennsylvania at 5,000 meters in crosswinds of up to 70 knots. It was wonderfully written. Tell people about this, the little Cessna and why it was doing what it did.
There's a company called Overview Energy, and their mission is to beam electricity from moving aircraft down to receivers on the Earth. And there's an engineering journal that published this story that you just read the lead of, that told the tale of basically the Orville Wright flight of Overview Energy. It was flying over Pennsylvania. It successfully beamed electricity down to receivers from the ground from a moving aircraft. And while other companies and major companies are doing this is sort of a little engine that could kind of story. And it is the beginning of what I think will be an enormous industry, which is satellites, drones, moving aircraft of all kinds, beaming electricity down from space into receivers on Earth, with obviously limitless solar power driving the whole thing. So
well, that wasn't obvious to me until I read the story. But now that it's explained to me, if you can get a collector up above the clouds and just take the solar energy direct and beam it down to Earth, that is limitless energy.
Correct. And, my guess would be that Elon Musk would be the leader in this, because he already has however many tens of thousands of satellites in the orbit, and he keeps sending up tens of thousands more. So Musk is probably the leader, but I'm sure there are other companies, Google and others, that are looking at this. And obviously, with data centers eating up so much power, it's really important that we find new sources of electricity, and beaming sun power, solar power, essentially up from space down to Earth would take an enormous pressure off prices of electricity for all of us. So it's something to watch.
Overview Energy, my hat is off to you, and I'll keep my eyes on the sky for Cessnas so I don't get sunburned. Let's go to the second one, which I understood pretty easily, because I know about steel dumping from Reagan-era days, what the Chinese did. But why don't you explain, because I hadn't made the parallel comparison to AI, which, of course, makes sense to me again.
Well, the steel thing, as you know, China generated massive overcapacity in steel output, and then they dumped it onto the market. And the point of that was to put American steel industry and other steel industries out of business, essentially make it prohibitive for them, for U.S. Steel and others to be successful. And of course, and that there followed steel plant after steel plant folding in the U.S. The concern is that they were going to do the same thing with AI, that they have AI platforms that aren't quite as sophisticated as the ones that the U.S. has developed, but they're close enough for government work, if you will, and all sorts of companies will use them because they'll be cheaper, and China will price them much, much cheaper than what the U.S. companies will charge. And so by undercutting them on price, they will make all of this investment that the U.S. Tech companies have made into server farms and data servers. They will cut their knees off, essentially.
Well, yeah, I lived this, John. I grew up in Warren, Ohio, in the heart of the Steel Valley, and first United Steel went down, and then Republic, and then Copperwelt, and they kept going until it was a steel desert. They were all closed. All the sites are still there. A couple specialty steels are back. But when it hits you very, very quickly, and all of a sudden an industry that was driving the whole economy and part of the state, and Pennsylvania as well, is gone. So do the AI barons realize that there's a wolf at the door? Did we lose John? I think you froze, John. As the wolf was at the door, It's right. I can go back and do my NFL voice again while we wait for John to come back, because that really did read like an NFL. You got to remember 40 for 60 with Joe, Minnesota Vikings. What was Joe's last name? Minnesota Vikings quarterback. When he comes back on, we're going to talk about this because I'm going to read it to you what he had to say. Chinese AI startup DeepSeek is expected to launch its next generation AI model that features strong coding capabilities in coming weeks, according to two people with direct knowledge of the plan. The new model, the V4, is a successor to the V3 model DeepSeek released in December 2024. Initial tests done by DeepSeek employees based on the company's internal benchmarks showed that it outperformed existing models such as Anthropic's Claude and OpenAI's GPT series in coding, two people said. So if they do to AI what China did, if China does to AI what China did to steel, the AI barons, oh, you're back. John, so do the AI barons know the Chinese wolf is at the door?
Oh yeah, no, Microsoft, made a big announcement about it this past week, and the fight, the competition, the space race, if you will, between Chinese and U.S. Tech companies to develop the best AI makes everyone enormously nervous because so much money is being expended, and if that investment is stranded, the disaster follows. So.
Well, and you sent me later in the day one of the famed forecasters put out a pretty good forecast based on AI investment, but that's counterintuitive given what you just told me. And the AI bubble is of concern. Do you think the economist Rabini factored this into his forecast of 4% plus GDP growth, even with the drags of tariffs and everything else?
I think he's assuming that it will work out. So if you do assume that it will work out and that the U.S. tech companies are clever and adaptive and can figure out a way to avoid the full impact,
Well, did it
then
again.
then the
Okay.
then the process is positive. Let's put it that way.
Oh, let's merge the last two together because I think they explain a lot. One is all-time record high of U.S. adults register independent, 45%, and the NEA has come out with a crazy identitarian-driven grammar book. And I think that's one of the reasons the Democrats can't grow, is that they've gone over the left edge. Not sure about the Republicans. What do you think about those two together, John Ellis?
Well, my occasional podcast partner Joe Klein wrote a great column this week, in which he talked about the identity politics of the Democrats and how it will always prevent them from being successful. And it goes back to what I think is the most important advertisement of the 2024 campaign, which is the Trump campaign ad that said, Kamala Harris, she's for they, them. Donald Trump, he's for you. That sort of perfectly captured all of the problems that the Democrats have. And it's one reason why the party ID amongst, the electorate for Democrats has declined so dramatically.
Did you and Joe
So
get to how the Minnesota story is going to impact, if at all? Because I have concerns it's hurting Republicans. Those concerns were in the Wall Street Journal today. On the other hand, a lot of MAGA Republicans say, no, that's actually Minnesota buffoonery over-indexing for blue cities and blue states, and it's going to help us. What do you think?
I think it hurts the Trump White House. I think that the video is, for a lot of people is really, really troubling. And it's particularly troubling, I think, amongst independent voters. And in order to be successful in the midterm elections, Republicans are going to have to do very, very well among independent voters. So I think net, it's a negative for Team GOP.
So the independent, at 45%, is it fair to say they were very concerned about an open border, and they're also very concerned about overzealous ICE agents? Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that the concern about the border was not universal, but the large majorities were concerned about the Biden administration's essentially open border policy. And part of that was that the fentanyl crisis had done so much damage. But this ICE action in Minneapolis has been, I think, detrimental to the Republican cause.
Always good to talk with John Ellis. News Items is the only newsletter you need every morning, Monday through Friday, and once on the weekends. Look up News Items, John Ellis. It's on Substack. Thank you, John.
President Trump has been clear. He will not, nor should the international community, tolerate innocents being slaughtered in the streets. Since 1979, for decades, the regime has posed a threat to peace and security in the name of a religious ideology. The regime calls for death to America and the annihilation of.
Welcome back, America. That was Ambassador Michael Waltz, the Ambassador of the United States to the United Nations. I am joined now by Eli Lake. Eli is the host of the Breaking History podcast. He is a contributor to the Free Press. This week he was on a commentary podcast that was very informative, and he is one of a handful of people that I actually call expert on the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I'm not even going to ask you a question, Eli. I'm going to give you the floor to tell the audience, as the weekend, a watchful weekend begins, what ought they to be looking for and thinking about?
Well, I keep wanting to come back to something, which is that, first of all, I don't know that the regime has days left or that there will be a dramatic moment over the weekend or next week, but I do think that we're in the beginning of the end. It's not entirely applicable as an analogy, but it's important to remember the Islamic Revolution that resulted in the current Islamic Republic of Iran really begins on January 2nd, 1978. And it is a full year until the Shah leaves, and then Khomeini comes and returns to Iran, sadly. So I would not think about this in terms of the next few days and in our incredibly short attention span right now. We have a sort of geopolitical attention deficit disorder. I think that there's no coming back from it. So that
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
We do.
Right. And I just don't think, and I would say that of all the things that came out in the last week, and there's so much news, it's worth looking at. It's in Farsi, but there are translations. It's making the rounds. You can see it everywhere. But it's a woman calls into an overseas kind of chat show that is run by members of the Iranian diaspora. She, I think, credibly claims that she is the daughter of a senior Revolutionary Guard Corps commander. You can tell that she is on the brink. She's asking for information to get to The Hague or to have somebody arrest or kill her father. That is how serious it is. And then she goes on to describe what they are doing to people who have been caught protesting. She describes what was done to her and her friends when they protested the last big time you saw these national uprising with the Women Life Freedom movement. And it's really disturbing because this is obviously a family.
Now, Eli, I got to ask you
but
about
I think
that,
we have to remember that in every one of...
I did see that. I did listen to it. The entire subtext, it was in Farsi, and I had to read the subtitles. But I did not repost it because with AI and with expatriate diaspora polemics, I didn't know if I could trust it because it's so disturbing if it's true. It's the daughter of a IRGC commander who had her beaten and had to watch people get shot. If it's true, it's horrific. How did you judge it credible?
I judge it credible because I've heard similar kinds of things really for the last 20 years, which is that the internal families divides, that oftentimes the children of particularly elites in the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, have been caught up. And you've seen versions of this. I mean, former presidents' daughters were protesting in 2009. And so it rang true to me in that respect. I felt like you could, even though I don't speak Farsi, but her emotional trauma sounded real. It sounded like somebody who was kind of experiencing a kind of break, and her conscience could no longer allow her really. I mean, again, it's tragic. You're right to
It's
to
riveting.
not trust things. Yes,
It's riveting.
It's riveting.
And,
But I
and
bring
if
it up
it's-
not because, right, you're right that it's impossible to verify these things. I bring it up, though, because I think that's a real dynamic that's going on. So when we're trying to understand how long the regime will last, you have to remember every single one of these thugs that sit atop this kind of hierarchy of oppression has a family, and they have neighbors, and they have friends who themselves are probably, they know they hate them. So I just bring that up because I think it's something that's a very real dynamic in Iran.
Well, it
right
rings
now.
a bell for me that during the Iraq and the Afghan wars,
Yeah.
whenever we would kill someone, the left would say, if you kill someone, you create 4 or 5 new insurgents. And I always thought, not if it was a bad guy. I do believe if you execute a civilian marching in the streets with a
Yep.
machine gun or a gun to the, I do believe that their family is forever anti-regime. And that is a cumulative trauma on Iran. Now, I've been calling this week the end of the beginning, which I thought started in June with Operation Midnight Hammer. Whatever Trump does now will be the exclamation point. And I give him weeks, if not 2 months, to actually follow through on the threat, because those tens of thousands of people who are arrested, they're still in Irvin prison and everywhere else in Tehran that they imprison
Yep.
dissidents. So are you ruling out Trump doing anything this weekend or next month?
Well, I mean, if you're going to read the tea leaves that he posted a couple hours ago, that he thanked the regime for canceling, what did he say? A very high
800.
number of 800 executions. I don't know if that number is correct. It's certainly true that they postponed some executions. At the same time, I would like to see some non-kinetic options deployed. We know that the regime is sending their mouthpieces on international media. Let's take down their internet. Let's make sure that we flood Iran with the Starlink base stations. Let's start publicizing the accounts of regime elites and then freezing those accounts. Let's start
What
doing
about
things
what about
that make them
medium
uncomfortable.
kinetic? They've murdered
Yeah.
6,000 people. If I use the mean, right, 6,000 people.
Right.
Ought we not to say every time you do this, we're going to do at least this? And yes, the cyber, yes, the non-kinetic, and then blow up Karg Island or take out some missile. I know that there's a second-order consequence to Israel, which does give me pause. But ought they not to receive some kind of a message from the world that they can't act like savages?
Every province has an IRG and Basiji headquarters building. Top of the list. We could wipe them out in a couple hours.
What do you
That would
think
send
that
a huge message.
every time they do something that we see? What do you think Israel is at risk if we do that?
I think that I think there's a potential, again, we could see barrages of ballistic missiles, and Israel doesn't have the air defense to take care of that. And then, yes, there could be some risk there. My sense is that the Israelis would take the uncertainty and the damage of a kind of last flail of the Iranian regime if it helped hasten its collapse. And I hope we're seeing that. And I do think that I think it's a good way to put it, the beginning of the end.
I hope that you will continue to show up on commentary and write for the Free Press, Eli, and maybe do a new breaking history on regime collapse. There's regime change, there's regime evolution, which is Venezuela, and then there's regime collapse, which is what we want to see in Iran. Eli Lake can be followed on X at Eli Lake and at the Breaking History Podcast and at the Free Press. No weekend review show would be complete without Matt Continetti. You can follow him on X at Continetti. You can read him at the Wall Street Journal. He is the senior scholar at the American Enterprise Institute in Domestic Policy Studies. And I do 3 segments a week with Matt. And if I were a Jeopardy game, this would be the segment called Iran. The segment off air today will be called Minnesota. And then category 3 is potpourri in the 3rd segment. Let's start with Iran. Matt, I just talked with Eli Lake. Nobody knows nothing, but what's your assessment of where we are at the end of a week of incredible brutality? Such a blood-soaked, evil regime.
Yes. Well, I think where we are is the Iranian regime is severely weakened, Hugh. It's lost the legitimacy, whatever it had left among the Iranian people. The Iranian people no longer fear the regime. And as the Stanford scholar Abbas Milani pointed out in the New York Times this morning in a very perceptive piece, repressive regimes need fear. Once the people lose fear, the regime is in severe trouble. And so what we're at right now is President Trump has said that he's not going to attack because of what he's heard from other of our allies, and also because of actions that the Iranian government has taken in delaying or not engaging in public execution and slightly pulling back on some of the most violent repression, it seems. But that doesn't mean that the Iranian regime is out of the woods. Far from it. In fact, I think one reason Trump has delayed any action is we don't have all the assets in place necessary for a strike that would truly help the protesters, truly punish the Iranian government in such a way that it would both lack the capacity to suppress its own people and to retaliate against the United States and our allies. But those assets are moving. We have an aircraft carrier group moving to the region now. We are getting other armaments and platforms in place. So I think we're at the one stage of the crisis, but that Iran will continue to dominate American foreign policy in the months ahead.
I keep saying, Matt Kennedy, that this is the end of the beginning of the Trump policy towards Iran. The beginning was Operation Midnight Hammer. Then he's had 8 days of ramped up threats beginning on this program 8 days ago, and then he kept it up through Sean Hannity, through the weekend. Then he began to dial it back. I have no idea what he's going to do. Nothing will surprise me. But is he open to criticism if, say, 60 days from now, nothing has happened and the thousands who were jailed, in addition to the thousands who were killed, are still jailed, that he baited and switched the Iranian public into demonstrating?
You never want to draw a red line and then back down from it, because that erodes American deterrence. And Donald Trump has built up American deterrence over the course of his 2 presidencies, and most spectacularly with Operation Midnight Hammer against the Iranian nuclear program, and then just 2 weeks ago with Operation Absolute Resolve, extracting and arresting Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela. He's built up our deterrence. So if ultimately that red line is not enforced, that would erode American deterrence, and our enemies throughout the globe would notice it and be prepared to act and exploit it. But I don't think we're there yet. I think what Trump has said is he's laid kind of the predicate that, okay, he's changed some of the regime's behavior. He has coerced the regime into delaying these executions, into backing off some of the worst, most egregious killing. And therefore, he doesn't need to enforce the red line. But I think he's going to face another crisis down the road where he'll be tasked again. Are you going to enforce the red line? The question, Hugh, is what does Donald Trump want out of Iran? Donald Trump he's not in the regime change business. He's in the regime coercion business. He wants to shape what these governments do. And in this case, what he wanted them to do was stop killing the protesters. And in larger Iranian policy, he wants a complete and verified denuclearization and massive restrictions on their missile program. If he doesn't get it through diplomacy, he's going to act militarily. We've seen that before.
So 30 seconds till we go to break, Matt, and turn to Minnesota. What do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu asked of him or didn't ask of him?
It's hard to say, but every time you draw a red line, you have to be prepared for all the secondary consequences. And a strike on Iran by the United States would mean that the Iranians would retaliate. And that retaliation would be most likely directed to the little Satan, what the Iranians call the Israel, the Jewish state. And I think we're at a place after the 12-day war, after Operation Midnight Hammer, where we need to replenish our munitions, and in particular our air defenses, not just Israel, but also American forces in the region, and our offensive munitions, right? The actual bombs that we would drop in any campaign. So it's a moment of preparation. The action may come later. I'm
on special report tonight, and if Minnesota comes up, I'm going to make the obvious point, which I don't know if many people know. Minnesota is awash in privately held handguns. It's an open carry state. It's a concealed carry state. The permits shall issue permits. The ICE agents have every right to be there. The state and the local government are not cooperating. But boy, oh boy, It's already one dead, and I think it's going to be justified force. But how dangerous a moment is this for the people in the Twin Cities and for Donald Trump?
Well, it's an incredibly dangerous moment for the people in the Twin Cities and for America's federal law enforcement agency, ICE, which is there to enforce the law, to enforce the law against illegal immigration, and in particular against illegal immigrants who have committed violent crimes. You know, amidst all this debate, Hugh, you have to step back and ask, who is responsible for this combustible situation? And I have to say, I don't believe it's either the government, the elected government of Donald Trump, or the agents who are trying to enforce policy and the law who are responsible for this mess we have in Minnesota. I believe it's the elected officials at the local and state level who have turned both Minneapolis and Minnesota at large into a sanctuary for illegal migration, and who are not providing any assistance to the federal law enforcement who are there by an elected government to actually make sure that illegal, violent criminals are taken off the streets. And yet, all of the discourse I see is placing blame on the ICE agents. I think that's a complete misallocation of responsibility. And unfortunately, no one at the state level is trying to quiet the situation.
I think it'll be an issue in their governor's race this year. But I have heard that Florida has had 40,000 apprehensions by ICE without an incident, and that is because Florida assists ICE in doing their job. And I just wish that point were made more often. I do think it's a political net negative for Donald Trump. Do you agree with me, Matt?
I think that you've definitely seen an uptick in people who are leery of some of ICE tactics. And you see people who are like, what's going on? They don't like the chaos. They get into the kind of that cocoon, that crouch, that defensive crouch. Make it stop, right?
Yeah.
But look, Q, think of 2020. In the summer of 2020, amidst all the rioting, people thought, oh, Trump might be hurt by all this chaos. What happened in the 2020 election? Republicans overperformed. Why? Because at the end of the day, voters want law and order. They don't want anarchy and violence. And the anarchy and violence that we're seeing in Minnesota right now, yeah, it might hurt Donald Trump in some of these polls we're looking at. But in the long term, if the Democrats are on the side of abolish ICE and contest and open borders and allow illegal, violent criminals to remain in place, the Democrats are going to suffer.
From your word, from your lips to the ears of every voter.
We're going to see NATO has been dealing with us on Greenland. We need Greenland for national security very badly. If we don't have it, we have a big hole in national security, especially when it comes to what we're doing in terms of the Golden Dome and all of the other things. We have a lot of investments in military. We have got the strongest military in the world, and it's only getting stronger. And you saw that with Venezuela. You saw that with the attack on Iran, with the knocking out their nuclear capability potentially. So, yeah, we're talking to NATO.
Welcome back, America. President Trump on the White House lawn today. Matt Continetti is still with me from AEI and the Wall Street Journal. Matt, Greenland. I made a big case for taking Greenland on America's Newsroom with Dana Perino and Bill Hemmer yesterday. Golden Dome aside, and that's a big deal on Golden Dome because hypersonics can come over the pole and regular ICBMs come over the pole, but because there's a 230-mile exclusive economic zone around every one of the 27,000 miles of shoreline that Greenland has. And that's fishing and that's oil, but fishing primarily. And then today, the Select Committee on China did me a solid by putting out the report on Chinese overfishing, that they are predators. They destroy environments. Do you think the message is getting past the late night comics that this is a serious issue?
Hard to say. It's hard to go out there and see who is in favor of Donald Trump's policy toward Greenland, other than President Trump. And I mean, I would like Greenland as well. I think it's extremely important geopolitically, economically, as you say, in terms of the resources. When we think about building up our stockpile of rare earth minerals, they are plentiful in Greenland. It's important. But the type of approach Trump is taking to Greenland, I don't see much public support for in the polls or in Congress even. What I do see is this: a parallel between Donald Trump's approach to Greenland in the second term and his approach to NATO in the first term. Remember, Hugh, when Donald Trump started telling NATO that they needed to ante up, they need to begin contributing to the burden of defense in the European continent and in the alliance at large, the Europeans screamed. They protested, and we were treated to endless news cycles about, is Donald Trump going to destroy NATO? Donald Trump against our allies. Well, what was the net result? They're paying the 5%. And it was it was a difficult process. It was a contested process. But at the end of the day, NATO was stronger for the Donald Trump's intervention than it was before. I wouldn't be surprised that if at the end of Donald Trump's second term, NATO is committed to Greenland's defense, there's a much larger American presence here. America has a greater role in Greenland's economy and has a secure foothold in it geopolitically. And that will be the result, despite all of the battling and negotiations and crying, just like we saw in the first term, over defense spending overall.
Now, by the time we talk again, Matt Cotney, we'll be past the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump's second term. So he's got first year done next Tuesday. Who's the best communicator after the president and the vice president and Secretary Rubio? They're 1, 2, and 3 in whatever order you want to go. Who communicates well on behalf of this administration?
Well, I think Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is a fantastic press secretary and an excellent communicator. I think if you're looking at other cabinet members, Hugh, I think Secretary Duffy at Transportation has been very good, very effective. And Secretary Hegseth has definitely achieved the goal that Donald Trump gave him at the outset of his second term, which is reinvigorate America's military. And so we see that because of Hegseth's personality and his dynamism, among other factors, recruitment has shot back up and the services are fulfilling their goals. And there's a real emphasis on war making rather than identity politics and environmentalism, like at the Pentagon, like you've seen in Democratic administrations. So I think there's a wealth of talent in this cabinet. And let's not forget that Secretary Kennedy has an entire constituency all of his own. And the way in which they've introduced some of these dietary reforms, I think, has been well received in all quarters. So there's definitely a lot of communicators in this administration.
But some of them have been sent to the Witness Protection Program. Peter Navarro comes to mind. He's been disappeared, and he puts out a column every now and then. And I've known Peter for 40 years, so I can see him. I'm aware of him. Are there others who ought to go into the Witness Protection Program who don't do good by the administration's messaging?
Well, on the cabinet side, I mean, in addition to the individual you mentioned, of course, the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, seems to be absent from many crucial decisions. And I heard the joke in Washington that DNI now stands for "Do Not Invite," and so that might reflect the president's view of that personality within the cabinet. Look, I think the biggest challenge facing the administration as it goes into its second term is focus. Donald Trump called himself the upgrader in his interview with the New York Times. And I think it's a great way to think about what he's trying to do in his second term. He's trying to upgrade America, and that is not going to be easy. But when you ask American voters what they're most concerned about, it's the economy. And they really need to get to the point where their wages are not only outpacing inflation, which they've been doing under Trump this past year. Those wage gains need to make up for all the ground we lost during Biden, and we're not there yet.
Some controversies are self-selected. With that, one of those is Senator Kelly and Secretary Hegseth. I had 20 minutes with the president. He didn't ask for my advice, but if he ever did ask for my advice, I'd say, take everything off the table except the economy, and when you smash somebody up like Iran. Don't talk about Senator Kelly. Don't talk about Democrats, and get the job done with ICE without talking about it. What would your advice be?
I think that's right. I think that the government can really only accomplish one thing at a time. But Donald Trump, his personality is everywhere, all the time. He doesn't stop. I mean, he's renovating the East. He's rebuilding the East Wing. He's thinking of renovating the West Wing. He's repainted the Trump Kennedy Center. He's renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War. He closed the southern border. He ended the Iranian nuclear program, which the Iranian foreign minister admitted to our friend Brett Baier this week. I'm sure you noticed that as well.
Yep.
He is the very embodiment of an activist president, just like Teddy Roosevelt. They need to focus on the economy, but that's just not in Donald Trump's DNA.
Yeah, if we can just get everyone else to focus on the economy and let the president set his own agenda, that would be helpful for Republicans, I think. Matt Continetti, thank you. I did not go up the hill today, the implacable hill. I did not do it because I had to get my hair cut because I'm on special report tonight. And I always hear from people when my hair is disorderly. And so it was in danger of being arrested for disorderly conduct. That's how men, I think, generally get their hair cut. Is that they actually notice it themselves. And so I noticed it, and I go, oh, that's awful. But I will be wearing the University of Sewing IU tie tonight on special report, sent to me by Margaret, Old English spelling Margaret, and from the University of Sewing. And I've lost her. Dwayne must have gotten rid of her. Oh, here she is. I want to thank you again, Margaret. She is the universityofsewing.com lady, and she sent me the IU tie. I'm going to wear it tonight, and I hope I don't jinx the Hoosiers because my friend Scott Phillip is out there, and I know this is the first time he's ever had a playoff in anything, actually, so I'm hoping for them. Bernina, made to create, Bernina Sewing Machines, Accessory, and Service. I'm not obliged to say that. I was not paid to say that. But I'm going to wear the tie that she sent me as a gift, and I hope they don't ask to see the IU emblem because it's bad. But I do take my Relief Factor because I am doing the long trundle tomorrow morning, and I want to make sure I have the Relief Factor in me. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega, very easy to take. There are the 4 pills. And down that she goes. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I take it every day, and if I can get the miles I want to do in tomorrow, I'll tell you about it on Monday, and I'll tell you if I feel great, which I expect I will, because I took my Relief Factor. You can, too, by calling 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Ask for the starter pack, $19.95, 3 weeks, less than $1 a day, or go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. The other sponsor today is consumercellular.com. 1-800, the number 411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. And you got 6 or 7 minutes after the show ends during news, weather, and sports. You can get started. 1-800-411-4454. It takes about 20 minutes to switch. It's not hard. It's a one-button touch. Then you're talking to an American-based service center, a real live human being. Or you can go to consumercellular.com/you. Either way, whether you call or whether you go online, 1-800-411-4454 or consumercellular.com/Hugh. Use my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H. That way, if you make the switch, whatever plan you pick, you'll get the second month for free. But I do want to tell you, if you're over 50, you definitely want to call because almost certainly you're paying too much for data, especially if you have an unlimited data plan. They will beat it, almost certainly. The unlimited data plan that they offer, 2 lines if you're over 50, 2 lines, unlimited data, $60 a month. Get your phone bill out and you're going to say, really? Because you're going to find you're paying considerably more if you've got one of the grandfathered programs from Big Cell that scared you into buying it years ago and you forgot about it and you haven't looked at your phone bill because you do direct bill pay. Do give them a call, 1-800-411-4454, or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Remember, my code is Hugh for the second month free. The Big Weekend Pod and the Weekend Show underway. Ben Dominich joining us as we do on most Fridays when he's awake. He's got a newborn, so it's always a question of whether or not he's awake. However, with a newborn, you get to catch up on the late night.
That's deeply unfair, Hugh. I'm typically awake 19 to 20 hours out of the day.
Don't drop the baby. Don't drop the baby. That's all I got to say. Ben, that means you're up in the middle of the night, so you're caught up on everything that happened with Iran this week. I'm starting there, and we might end there as well in a half an hour. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Well, personally, I think that the president, was trying to send a signal, and he did. I don't know that it's going to result in the effectuation of what he'd like to achieve. But look, I think that we're dealing right now with a situation that is basically unprecedented, certainly in my lifetime, and is closer to the kind of upheaval that could lead to a regime change there than we have seen in the past, and certainly under Obama, where we saw the Green Revolution and everything that led to. We have seen so much in terms of the bad decisions of past presidencies as it relates to Iran, and so we have a glimpse of possibility here. But we're also operating, I think, Hugh, in really a dearth of internal knowledge to a greater degree than we've had with a lot of other conflicts and a lot of other protests. And I think that hampers our ability to analyze the situation, just given the fact that there are so many moving parts, there are so many people involved, and we don't really have a clear indication of what is going to come next. Now, we have seen a number of different, other parties weigh in. We've seen the simple fact that I think, the presence, the continued presence of the ability of the Iranians to access outside internet, capabilities, which the regime has obviously attempted to crack down on and has had hit or miss success with, is really a major factor here, because the more that the world can see what's going on inside Iran, the more that you can see reactions from the various parties involved. And I think a big open question about all of this is what the Chinese think, whether they think this is a possibility of a situation where in a transactional relationship they need to make a determination that this is not something where we need to get heavily involved, or whether it's one where they want to lean in on this relationship, believe in this regime, believe that it's going to maintain its previous power. And that's something that I think is still an open question.
Now, Ben Domenech, I didn't begin the segment as I should by saying you host the Big Ben Pod every week, and I've saved it. I haven't listened to it this week yet because I've saved it for a long trundle tomorrow morning. And I don't know if you've talked about it yet, so if you did, pardon me. President Trump, we could go on this program, on Sean Hannity's program, in a pull-aside with Tony DeCopel, online, gave the appearance of an imminent strike to the extent that we already see online Taco. And President Trump chicken, I think that's deeply unfair because I think we're at the end of the beginning of the first year of Donald Trump in Iran, and Operation Midnight Hammer buys you a lot of credibility, and I think you might get a window of 2 months before you can say, even begin to argue he led people into the streets where they got killed on the false premise that he was going to act. Did you cover that? What do you think of that charge that is online already about the president?
I covered that extensively and had an interview with Ben Teleblu, who you may have.
Oh, yes. Very good.
FTD on this same topic at length. And one of the things that I think is clear is that the president has used in the past his unpredictability to great effect. Whether that's going to turn out the same in this situation, I think, is a riskier prospect. The other thing to keep in mind is that the president has run up toward some things like this in the past and then pulled back. He also has had the potential of pulling back and then pulled the trigger. I mean, how quickly we forget the idea that, I'm going to think about it for the next 2 weeks as it relates to the Iranian nuclear program. And that's the kind of attitude that the president has, and I'm not entirely sure that we can say as analysts looking at this situation and relying as we do on sources who are both within and around the administration, that this was a situation where that was as imminent as he seemed to indicate. It could be posturing. It could be posturing to effect. But look, this is a scenario where I think a lot of people are very much bullish on the idea that this is a broad-based revolt against the regime. It's not just something that is confined to one sector or to one aggrieved party. The inflation concerns, the middle-class concerns, or I should say perhaps the merchant class concerns regarding everything that's going on in the economy, in addition to the opposition generally to the regime's posture toward the West and the willingness of this next generation of Iranians to be more open to the West, is something that is very real, and we shouldn't pretend like it isn't. But that doesn't mean that this is going to be a situation where you see, potentially, people who are going to willingly go into exile or leave the kind of leadership behind. It's also a situation where I think we have to pay a lot of attention to what the IRGC is doing, and whether they are going to be, effectuating the kind of killings that we've seen them do, just ad nauseum, without any kind of prevention, without any kind of pushback from protesters who are unarmed and who are incapable of defending themselves and unable at this point to get their message out.
We haven't not seen anything like this, Ben, and I use my term not seen anything since Tiananmen Square, which we did not see, right?
Yeah.
We know what happened, but we did not see it, and we know what happened here, but we did not see it. I'm not sure America ever responded appropriately to Tiananmen or reacted appropriately to the Chinese Communist Party thereafter. Do you think that we ought to release whatever video comes out as soon as the internet opens up? Because it will be, as Yasser Ali said, there's going to be an avalanche of these videos once they're reconnected. I want them everywhere.
I completely agree with that, and I think that it's something that is in the American interest to do so, but also in the interest of the world. One thing that we should understand is how much this is a destabilizing element, not just in terms of American interests in the Middle East or the interests of Israel or the interests of our allies, is something that I think really reshapes the globe. You have so many connections that Iran has had, and you have this unique moment where it has lost its proxy in Venezuela. It has lost so much support that it could depend upon in the past. It has had its nuclear program set back in an embarrassing way. It has had its military proxies across the Middle East set back. And this is truly, I think, a unique moment where something like this might actually work. And, look, we're not talking about American regime change. That is not what we are embarked upon. We are not attempting to remake Iran in any way. This is something that is coming from inside. And supporting it from the outside is something that is in America's interest, and it is in the interest, by the way, of a lot of decrepit European powers, whether they want to acknowledge that or not. And that's something that I think has to result in a change in behavior on the part of leadership. And so much of what the president has done in this second term is about breaking open the assumptions on the part of foreign policy bigwigs and experts that have, dated back decades about what was possible. And he's done this in so many different regards, and this could be another example of that. Yeah. It could also be a situation where, unfortunately, once again, the brutality of a horrible regime that has subjugated its people and is willing to kill them in the tens of thousands in order to maintain their control it just reasserts itself in a very bloody way.
Now, I'm going to talk about decrepit European regimes during the break when Denmark and Greenland come up with Ben. But before we go there, we got 2 minutes, Ben. What about simply saying, it's not the opportunity, not an excuse, but simply saying there are standards which, if you're not a superpower, will evoke a response from the West. And here's the response. Blow up Karg Island, blow up IRGC headquarters. If you do this, this will follow, a way of training the regime. Matt Continetti calls it regime coercion, not regime change, regime coercion. I think that would be good hygiene for the world.
I think it would be good hygiene, but I'm not sure the president is willing to roll the dice on that. He likes so much these targeted things where there is a very clear goal point, a very clear progression. And I'm not sure that he's willing to go down this road of picking targets and going after them in such a way. Perhaps he is. That, to me, would represent a bit of a break with his personality as it relates to these things, where he just likes binaries. He likes, does the Iranian nuclear program exist or not? Is Maduro in charge of Venezuela or not? And in the sense of the IRGC, you can bomb a lot of things. There's certainly the
That's why Karg Island comes to mind. Is Karg Island sending any oil to the world or not?
I mean, that's perhaps if he could be convinced that that's a binary that would result in a change, then I think perhaps that argument from Matt Continetti could work.
Ben Domenech, I like Denmark. I like the Little Mermaid statue. I think it's quaint. They were alongside of us in Afghanistan for a long time, 18,000 deployed there. They have 20 ships. Greenland has got 27,000 miles of coastline, and out from those 27,000 miles of coastline extends an exclusive economic zone of 230 miles that they can't protect from even Chinese predatory fishing practices, which are legend. Do you think people are taking this seriously enough? Because it's beyond hypersonics and Golden Dome. There's a lot of reason to put Greenland under our umbrella.
Well, I think that people don't really understand this, and this is a defect of both American education and the way that people commit absolute crimes when it comes to the depiction of Trumpian ideas as being highfalutin and out of the realm of possibility. It is absolutely in the American security interest to have Greenland protected and to have it under our security umbrella. There's no question about it. And I think in anticipation of the kind of conflicts that we could potentially see in the future, it is perhaps essential to that type of protection to have some type of security agreement with the Danes and with Greenland would be, from my perspective, the ideal. I don't think that an annexation or anything along those lines is necessary, but I do think that we need to have them, essentially under our overarching umbrella in order to protect them and protect our own security, understanding that look, the climate and what is going to happen in the Arctic Circle in the future is going to be one where this becomes all the more important. And the discussion about this has turned into this kind of fanciful late night talk show. They're making fun of everything, associated with it. I think it's deeply serious. I think it's incredibly important. It's as important, I would say, as saying, does Hawaii matter to the United States? Of course, Hawaii matters to the United States.
Yep.
The idea that we're not going to have, a projection of the
or Guam or Diego Garcia.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is just like, it's madness to pretend like this doesn't matter. It obviously does, and to turn around and turn this into some kind of fanciful discussion is absurd and unserious. But then, I mean, we're used to that by now. Here.
Now, when you write for the Transom or the Spectator, have you written at length about it? Because I don't know that anyone really has written at length about Greenland just from a serious standpoint.
I've dodged off various things, but you're right. I probably should do something longer, and perhaps I can use that as an excuse for a vacation after the baby is 6
Oh,
weeks.
don't take the baby to Greenland. Don't take your wife to Greenland.
No,
gosh.
This would be an entirely cold escapism on my part.
No, I spent a year in Iceland one weekend. No, don't do that. Ben Domenech, host of the Big Ben podcast, which you ought to listen to. I'll be listening to it on my long trundle this weekend. It's at Fox Podcast. It's also wherever podcasts are available. Read Ben at The Spectator, where he's an editor-at-large. Read him at The Transom on Substack. Ben, most people listening to the show know that I came to the show 25 years ago after a decade of being one of the co-hosts of the nightly news and public affairs show for the PBS affiliate in L.A. and KCET. And almost weekly and sometimes almost nightly, we were talking about whether or not the use of force by the police of L.A. or the sheriff's department in the county of Los Angeles was appropriate. It was Rodney King's decade, and so that was every night. We went through like police chief after police chief after police chief, Gates and Bernie and Willie. They kept coming because no one could get it right. Now
is HW? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he the last president who did the Insurrection Act?
I don't know. He did do the Insurrection Act for the riots. That was my second month in TV. Yes.
Yeah. I think he did. I believe he's the last one to do it.
All right. So
forgive me for interrupting.
No. Well, we take that experience, and now I'm up north, where I know Minnesota through the State Fair and radio bits with my AM 1280 The Patriot friends, and it's Minnesota Nice is real. It's real. It's the different place up there, and now it's got this. It just doesn't add up that the L.A. storylines are now suddenly in the Twin Cities. And I put it down to over-indexing for buffoonery in leadership. What do you put it down to?
Well, I think that is part of it, but I also think, and my friend Ryan Grodetsky has pointed out, that if you add up, if you tabulate the arrests and deportations from Minnesota over the course of the past year, meaning the second Trump term, it amounts to approximately, according to estimates, around 2% of the population of illegal immigrants in the state. That may sound small to people. That's actually a huge amount. And I think that what that has done, given that that is an outsized number of people who are participants in the Democratic side of the politics of the state, is that it has exacerbated the more extreme elements of the Democratic Party there in ways that have been somewhat unpredictable, but now seem to be consistent with a very violent, and I would say more akin to what we are used to seeing in Portland
and Seattle,
in Seattle, in the kind of behavior of these upper Northwest progressive echelons. That's something that we're now seeing in Minnesota to a greater degree, and I don't think it's going to stop. I only think it's going to escalate. And
I agree, but here's the question:
that to happen.
The little bit of Rodney King tape that we had 30 years ago, 35 years ago, the little bit, it was bad. It was black and white. It was dark at night, and the beating. Compare that with 30 years later. We have every 5 different angles on everything that happened.
Everybody's different iPhone angle to analyze at length, on CNN, et cetera, and that's going to lead inevitably to people having different opinions and different perspectives on things. But one thing that I do think, look, I said that this was a tragedy in part because, and I don't say that blaming, the ICE officer involved, but just because I think that this is something that is inevitably going to happen more frequently, and that leftist people have been infected with this mind virus that says that they need to be, reactionary opponents of law enforcement in the public square. And I follow enough leftists to see this thing playing out on a daily basis.
Well, should they? That's the question. Should ICE retreat? Because what has happened is Minneapolis is now marked as a place for the lunatics to assemble and try a Seattle, Portland in a new place. And because local government won't help you, you should retreat for a while. Because it could escalate. It could become L.A. again.
I don't think you can afford to retreat. I think this is too significant of an issue, and I think that it's incumbent upon you, in fact, as law enforcement, as enforcers of our nation's immigration laws, to continue to do so even in the face of people who are absolutely nuts. And will that lead to pain and to potential more tragedy in the future? It will, but only if these reactionaries continue to make the choices that they are making. But you cannot allow this to be determined by the people who are willing to run over ICE agents in order to prevent them from doing their jobs.
Okay, I'm glad to hear you saying this, but there is a heckler's veto that doesn't exist. But this is an open carry state. It's a concealed carry state. The ICE agents are in real danger from the lunatics, and what the lunatics want is to bait them.
But I think, Hugh, that you can't avoid this. This has been a question that has been, for time and again, the reason that the left has won on questions like this is because they are willing to be more extreme and to do more violence to people who are just wearing the badge with a flag on their shoulder, just trying to do their jobs. And we can't afford to have that as a nation anymore. And I, as a generation, refuse to accept this type of boomer methodology that says that, everything is Kent State all over again. This is ridiculous. I mean, we deserve to have a community where laws are enforced. And that is true across the United States of America. And I do not think we should be ashamed to argue for that.
I've been hit. I've been hit by the boomer ideology thing. I think, God, I'm down.
No, they just want to turn everything into the
talk show host down, boomer down.
No,
no, it's true though. Gosh, you got me. You winged me with the boomer stuff. It is true that we are all captives of the experience that we grow up with and we memorize. I memorized Rodney King in the decade thereafter, but if we don't enforce the law, they're just going to. It's like when there was a revival at the Christian college in Kentucky. Every revival attracted person across the country went there, so they had to shut it down, which was okay and easy to do because they were evangelical Christian. Here, you've got every lunatic in the country going to the Twin Cities.
It is a flare up in the air for everybody to come, and from my perspective, it's like you can't run away from that. You can't dodge that because then the lesson that they take is every time we throw up a flare, we can turn this thing around. We can scare the people who are trying to enforce the law. We can scare the politicians involved. And look, we have a president who's in his second term. He's not running again. He is as invested in this as he is in any other area of domestic policy. And I think this is the moment to lean in and say, the law actually matters. It really does. And maybe that's inconvenient for your mindset.
No, and we don't care if Woodstock on Ice is here. We're going to break it up.
Look, I really do think that this is a situation where, you know, as much as we can harden the target when it comes to ICE, we should be doing so. And that's something that, you know, I hope that this administration is doing, because they should understand that this is the beginning of this, not the end, and it's not going to go away in the next couple of years.
Is DHS communicating well? We have 40 seconds.
You know what? Here's a good answer to that question. I'm efforting Tricia McLaughlin to come back on the next Big Ben show.
Bingo.
We can talk about whether they are delivering that message effectively.
She's everywhere. I don't know that the points she's making are tight enough.
I think there needs to be some support, some support mechanisms, because a lot of this, she's out there on an island.
That's it. Well, she is out alone. Survivor, yeah, but that means you have to do every show every day, and it wears on you. Ben Domenech, thank you. Follow him at @BDomenech and go get the Big Ben podcast. Never expected to get, as Dwayne put it, boomer slapped by Ben Domenech, but I did. That little boomer violence there, rhetorical violence. And it's a very serious situation up in Minneapolis, and we'll watch it, but it's not as serious as what's going on in Iran. And, in fact, Greenland is more serious, long term. Here's President Trump on the White House lawn this morning. Cut number one.
Put a 25% tariff, which is, by the way, about 7 times more than they would have to pay by raising their drug, like 7 times. This wasn't like a little bit more, 7 times more. And I may do that for Greenland, too. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security. So I may do that. I'll give you a little, I'll take you out of that. In fact, that'll end up being the story. But actually, this is a much bigger story, because we're reducing health care by numbers that you haven't seen.
All right, he brought Greenland's on the mind of Donald Trump. Here's the White House lawn. That was an event. Here's the White House lawn. Cut number 2.
Why align with Delcy Rodriguez and the remnants of the Maduro regime, and not with Machado, who has the support of the Venezuelan people?
Well, if you ever remember a place called Iraq, where everybody was fired, every single person, the police, the generals, everybody was fired, and they ended up being ISIS. Instead of just getting down to business, they ended up being ISIS. So I remember that. But I'll tell you, I had a great meeting yesterday by a person who I have a lot of respect for, and she has respect, obviously, for me and our country. And she gave me her Nobel Prize. But I'll tell you what, I got to know her. I never met her before, and I was very, very impressed. She's this is a fine woman.
All right, cut number 2, cut number 3.
Did Arab and Israeli officials convince you to not strike Iran?
Nobody convinced me. I convinced myself. You had yesterday scheduled over 800 hangings. They didn't hang anyone. They canceled the hangings. That had a big impact.
That had a big impact, but we don't know what that impact is, or if it will endure, or what the Iranian videos will show. Cut number 14, the Prime Minister of Canada in Beijing with Xi Jinping. Cut number 14.
We're heartened by the leadership of President Xi Jinping and the speed with which our relationship has progressed in recent months.
Can I stop? I understand you got to do business with the Chinese, and that you've got to sell a lot of oil to China. To be heartened by the relationship with Xi Jinping, you're Canada, all right? Nobody cares if you're heartened or not. And you got to realize it's a genocidal, Marxist-Leninist dictator there. And Jimmy Lai is in jail, is in prison, and that didn't get any easier with that, Mark Carney. So if you really want to do the Canada stuff, I understand it. You got to sell your oil. You got to take their EVs in exchange. I understand it's a small economy. They need to make big deals with big powers. But you don't have to pretend that. Can we hear the beginning of that again? Cut number 14.
We're heartened by the leadership of President Xi Jinping and the speed with which...
All right, so I think he knew the moment that he said, we're heartened by the leadership of Xi. Listen to him pause after that one more time, cut number 14.
We're heartened by the leadership of President Xi Jinping and the speed with which our relationship...
what did I say? But he said it. What a mistake. I want to say relief factor because I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I tell you every hour I am because they sponsor the program and because I take it every day and because it works and people tell me it works. Happened to me again this week at an event where I was speaking at Legatus down in Orange County, California. And a runner, I mean a real runner, not a trundler like me. He's fast. He did 7 miles that day on 2 artificial knees, and he credits his recovery speed and continued running with relief factor. And the older you get, the more you need the natural supplements that are in relief factor. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. It's the only supplement I've ever taken, only one, in the last 20 years that I just don't believe in them generally. And I had to be persuaded to start, and now it's been 13 years, and I'm still taking it every single day. I wish you would give it a try. $19.95 is the starter pack. That's less than $1 a day for the 3-week ramp up. So you take 3 packets of Relief Factor, got 4 pills in each packet, 3 packets a day for the first week each day. Then you take 2 packets a day for the second week, and then you just do maintenance with 1 packet a day. And I want to assure you, you'll feel better. You'll thank me for it. 1-800, the number for relief. They've got a little more Woodstack generation here. 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief. Or go to their website, relieffactor.com. You Woodstockers, you really need it. Relieffactor.com.
We are stars, we are golden.
It is the end of the college football season on Monday night. Doug Lesmarie is here for the Friday football forecast. Most Fridays during the college football season, Doug, who's the co-host of the Bill and Doug Show, BillandDougOSU.substack.com, joins me. And Doug, I have got my Indiana University tie here, which I'll be wearing on special report tonight because I got to root for the Big Ten team. What do you think? What's going to be Monday night?
So Bill and I did our picks today, and we are divergent here. I really think Indiana's going to finish this thing off, Hugh. I really think that Indiana is a more complete team, and the idea of 3 straight Big Ten champs, Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana, it's a new era in college football. Indiana's favored by 8.5 in this game against Miami, right? Miami's kind of new too. They haven't won a national title since 2001. And we all remember the U. Once upon a time, they were a dominant force in college football. It's great to have them back. But Indiana's never been in a spot like this. And I like the Hoosiers' chances Monday night.
I read a long take from ESPN that they're the older of the 2 clubs and that Kurt Cignetti has certain metrics that he looks for, like the guardrails the Browns use, which haven't really worked. Where's the coaching edge in this matchup, Doug Lesmarie?
Yeah, Kurt Cignetti is a coaching monster. Like I don't know that we've seen where you just look for comparisons on this. What he's done, I think you have to give him the edge. But one of the interesting things here is Corey Heatherman, who's the defensive coordinator at Miami, and certainly Mario Cristobal is the head coach of Miami, like a loyal Hurricane. And as to bring them back after 2 decades is a great job by Mario Cristobal. But Corey Heatherman, the defensive coordinator for Miami, they hired him from Minnesota, but he once upon a time was the defensive coordinator for Kurt Cignetti at James Madison. So this is what it's like a spy novel, Hugh. If you were trying to take down Kurt Cignetti, what would you do? You'd want somebody who'd been on the inside. And Miami's defensive coordinator worked for 2 years for Kurt Cignetti. So he knows what Kurt Cignetti likes to do. He and the Indiana defensive coordinator right now, Bryant Haynes, are very good friends. They're both up for the award for the best assistant coach in college football. So Corey Heatherman for Miami has an idea of how these Cignetti Indiana guys think. And it's like, could that matter? I don't know if anybody can beat Kurt Cignetti, but you want to think like him if you're going to try to beat him.
Now, Doug, I got 2 questions I got to get in our short period of time. One, in the off season, I hope the Bill and Doug show is going to continue on as often a basis as it has been because I've become kind of addicted. Is that going to happen?
Yeah. But football, come on, Hugh. Ball is 365, man. This football never sleeps. We're not going anywhere. We got plenty to talk about for sure.
Well, that's because the game has changed so much, which brings me to Mr. Mendoza. I also read a profile of him. He's a little bit otherworldly. He's almost too perfect. You want your daughter to marry him kind of perfect. Is he for real?
It is. I think he is for real. And sometimes, you got to be honest, sometimes when a guy's so nice, it's like, is that what you want from a football player? Football players should have an edge. Football players got to be a little crazy. But like Fernando Mendoza is this guy, but he also balls out. And so sometimes those are my favorite guys that you can have a philosophical conversation off the field. And then when he gets on the field, he took a hit in the first play of the Big Ten title game against Ohio State. I thought he was out for the game.
Oh, yes.
He was knocked on his face. I thought they were taking him out on a stretcher, and he got up, missed one play, and came back in. So I do think he's for real. He's a different kind of guy, but his teammates rally around him. And Hugh, we've seen different personalities from quarterbacks. If your teammates love you, however you do it, if your teammates love you and you put yourself on the line for your team, you're in a pretty good spot as a QB.
All right, now Doug is picking Indiana for Monday night. And I want to ask you the second question. Dante Moore is going back to the Ducks. And that means the Jets are screwed, and they get the second pick. And Dane Brugler, Warren, Ohio, born and raised, and still working out of Warren, Ohio, has projected Arvell Reese, number 2, to the Jets. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, there might be four or five Ohio State guys in the top 20 of this draft, Hugh. So like Arvell Reese, it's sort of this modern era. He's a Micah Parsons potentially type of player, which we know how impactful he was for Dallas, got traded to Green Bay this year. You can be a linebacker, but then you can also rush the passer and get up on the edge. This versatility can really matter. It's hard, Hugh, because again, you look at it from a Browns perspective. Great, you have Myles Garrett. What better player could you have than Myles Garrett? But you don't have a quarterback, so you're not going to win. So, like, if you don't have a quarterback, you're still not going to get over the top, but you want to build up and fortify your team around it. Arvell Reese from the same kind of lineage, high school, as Troy Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, Ted Ginn Jr., these great guys who have come through Glenville High School in Cleveland. Tremendous player, great young man, and I'd take him, but just if you're the Jets, you still got to find a quarterback somewhere.
So did Bill Landis pick Miami because of their remarkable defensive line crushing Mr. Mendoza? Is that why he went that way?
In part, but also their offensive line and the way that they have they're big and physical on both sides of the line for Miami. And the way that Miami ran the ball against Ohio State, 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, like not necessarily explosive, but reliable. They have they're really big tackles, all ACC guard, like they're old and big. And so Indiana's defensive front is really good. They do a lot of their best work kind of with different looks and like keeping you off balance. I think Bill thinks that maybe Miami can just hold the ball, consistently run it, keep Fernando Mendoza off the field, and that's Miami's prescription for victory. I picked Indiana 56-14, so I don't think it's going to be that. I got a blowout. Blowout.
What is the over-under on the Las Vegas line? That's way above it, isn't it?
45 or something. I will say Indiana has scored exactly 56 4 times already this year, and they have another one of 55. So like we're right in that zone. 8 touchdowns. That doesn't seem so hard, right? 8 touchdowns.
Doug, is it good or bad that the 2 finalists are the 2 teams that beat the Buckeyes? Do we console ourselves, we Buckeye few, we happy few over the winter with that, or is it a point of pain?
I've been trying. I've tried that with Ohio State fans. Like, this is how I think Ohio State probably will finish number 3 in the final polls, even though they lost in the quarterfinals, because they were number 2 and the 2 teams they lost to are playing for the title. But I think for a lot of Ohio State fans, especially because the Indiana and Miami losses were kind of right there for the Buckeyes, knowing that just makes you think, oh, we were right there on the edge, and it didn't make it happen. So Ohio State fans are not soothed by that view, unfortunately.
Thank you, Doug Lesmerises. Bill and Doug, OSU.substack.com. We'll check in during the offseason. College football's only 6 months away. Bill and Doug, OSU.substack.com. Go Hoosiers on Monday night. I'll be wearing my IU tie tonight. Tarzana Joe, I'm sure, is rooting for the Hoosiers on Monday night and for the University of Sewing.com that made that tie possible.
It's lovely, lovely. But we have some housekeeping to do. You know the I want a poem button we've been talking about?
Yes.
Well, it was broken for the last 2 weeks, just like the chalice from the palace. The I want a poem button was broken, but my good friends at greenhaveninteractive.com put it back together for me. So if you sent me an I want a poem in the last 2 weeks and you haven't heard from me, it's not because I'm on vacation, it's because I didn't get it. So please send it again. Thank you.
Oh, goodness.
And I have written a poem called Eric the Red Meets Donald the Orange. But, you know the story about the shoemaker's wife? She goes barefoot?
Yes.
Well, the poet's wife doesn't get enough poetry.
Okay.
And it's the tantalizing Tarzana Johanna's birthday, a significant birthday. And so if you will indulge me, I've written a love lyric that maybe some Hugh Hewitt listener can set to music. And it goes something, but only something like this. You've taught me everything I know about the things that make love grow. And every day your words reveal the precious thing that lovers feel. We've had so much time together, you would think I'd know the way to tell you what your friendship means to me and to find the words to say. But although I live in language, when you appear, my tongue is tied. I need another chance to show you after all the words I've tried. So teach me how to say I love you so you hear it a new way. Teach me how to say I love you, though you hear it every day. Help me understand the feeling. Help me share the feeling too. Teach me how to say I love you, for without a doubt, I do. I do. I do. Happy birthday, Tarzana Johanna, from Tarzana Joe.
And happy birthday, Tarzana Johanna, from Hugh and Generalissimo and Dwayne and Harley, because we actually know she makes you possible.
That was awful, Joe. How has any guy got to compete with that?
I know, it's really bad of you to do that. Every single married man hates you right now.
Yes, every married man now hates you.
Now that the I want a poem button is fixed, if you want that, just touch I want a poem, and I will write that for you.
Okay, you know, Joe, if it doesn't work again, people are going to think it's a joke. So I hope it really is. You go to tarzanajoe.com for that beautiful poem that you know you can't write. You might be able to pass it off as your own if your wife wasn't listening. So that's the other. Just absolutely rip it off. Or call Joe if you need a poem for any occasion. tarzanajoe.com. I want a poem button.